Final Fantasy XVI has been a controversial game from the start. Its more mature and gritty style, its Devil May Cry influenced combat, and its purely AI controlled party members. While every mainline Final Fantasy title is a little bit different from the last, this one in some ways might be the most different. And you are going to want to hit that subscribe button because today it seems we have even more Final Fantasy XVI controversy. And today's controversy is based on a rumor that Final Fantasy XVI may not be performing as well on its pre-order sales as Square Enix would have hoped. This comes via journalist Imran Khan's Patreon, then reposted to Reset Era. I bring this up because I had heard recently that Square Enix is panicking slightly over Final Fantasy XVI pre-order numbers, which are tracking behind Final Fantasy XV, even accounting for the lesser number of launching platforms. Granted, those are pre-order numbers and they're usually only useful to gauge guaranteed day one sales versus potential day one sales, so the actual number could blow everyone away. But with the current tracking, I wonder if they want to remind people that the next chapter of Final Fantasy VII Remake's trilogy exists and give it more marketing time than they had planned. The initial sales of Remake were quite good, but it slowed down faster than Square seemed to expect. So I imagine they really want Rebirth to sell as well as possible. Well, of course they do, but I imagine that they are really hoping for an uptick in sales. People have been having discourse about the game not being on Xbox, and that being the primary reason why pre-orders are lower. However, it clearly says here in the statement that they are accounting for a lesser number of launch platforms, so that is absolutely not the case. Also, if this statement is true, we finally know why we haven't gotten updated sales on Final Fantasy VII Remake. As the statement said, Remake did sell quite good initially, selling 3.5 million units in the first few days, and then 5 million units by August of 2020, followed by us never getting another update again. And it also makes sense to me that they want Final Fantasy VII Rebirth to outsell Remake. Today's Q&A post on their Twitter even said, quote, "Do I need to play Final Fantasy VII Remake to enjoy Final Fantasy VII Rebirth? Motomu Toriyama. No, we have made preparations so that players who did not get a chance to play the first game can fully enjoy Final Fantasy VII Rebirth." So indeed, it seems that all around, Final Fantasy is struggling to hit the same stride that they did with Final Fantasy XV's release, in which Final Fantasy XV had 5 million units shipped and sold on day one. This was an absolutely insane launch, and Final Fantasy XV wouldn't stop there. It would then go on to have true legs in terms of sales, pushing all the way to 10 million units. It's ironic because Final Fantasy XV is one of, if not the most, divisive mainline title. However, there was no denying that the marketing for the game was phenomenal. From 10 years of anticipation, to the movie, to the anime, and even the continued support through DLC, which kept the game relevant and talked about. Ironically, these are the reasons that the game is often criticized. However, from a marketing perspective, these things absolutely worked. Now with this said, Yoshida does have a plan to make Final Fantasy XVI sell. In a recent interview with OGI, he was asked, quote, "This might be a weird question to ask since you have to put so much passion and effort into creating this game. When it comes to management, how do you think the sales aspect here, read, translated into profit and sales, in terms of timing and your audience and so on? Yoshi P. When it comes to product, when I first submit my proposal, it's a given that I would attach together with the budget documentation, like this will be the platform where the game will be released, development-wise it'll take a grand total of this amount, when the game will be released, the cost of marketing and PR will take this much, and the projected profit will be around this much. These will of course be included into the documentation, but I can tell you that I wouldn't want to look at the first week's sales for Final Fantasy XVI, he laughed. Yoshi P acknowledging that Final Fantasy XV's first week sales probably are not going to be that strong. However, this is natural as there are only currently 38 million PS5s, and when you consider that when Final Fantasy VII Remake launched on PS4, there were over 110 million PS4s sold, it seems incredibly unlikely that the game will sell that much that fast. However, Yoshi P is not without a winning strategy for Final Fantasy XVI. The interview then continues with OGI asking, quote, "Like for example, when it comes to movies, as movies run a duration of usually 2 hours when it comes to content, so in a way we can easily see how it performs. But when it comes to games, it takes time to complete them from start to finish, so it's tougher to grasp how the behavior would change. So this is my personal thoughts on the matter, but how do you approach the post-release sales period? Like, there is a change in certain behavior, and what kind of marketing strategy would you take after the game is released? Yoshi P. When it comes to sales extension, well, this can slightly differ from country to country, but when it comes to Japan, I can bring up one good example, which is Slam Dunk, which recently aired in theaters. For the generations who are fans of the show, they would be extremely interested about it, but there was a commotion when it comes to the promotion prior to its release, and this caused everyone to have doubts. But once the fans watched the movie, they'd go, "You better watch this movie," or they'd recommend it to those who haven't watched the movie, but expressed interest in it, and nothing beats that kind of attraction when it comes to what PR can do even today. Though as for me, I'd go back to my roots and convey it properly on how the game has been made and released properly. And if people find the game interesting, streamers from around the world will be streaming this game, and the louder those voices are, then it might encourage others who haven't bought the game yet to give it a try and purchase a PS5 alongside. Another thing I've realized is that younger generations don't tend to be particular about the release date and tend to base their purchase on what's popular within their community circles and what everyone is playing. In fact, this is what happens when it comes to Apex and Fortnite, and this is definitely what the trend is heading towards today. So what I did is make estimations on budget, lay out the plan saying Final Fantasy XVI is coming, and made simple approach to try getting the shop to convince gamers to get Final Fantasy XVI together with their PS5 purchase. Therefore, this time, I've laid out a plan on sales that would last about 18 months. Even when looking at the ownership ratio for PS5, there's no mistake that there will be a drop in absolute ratio, rather than looking at games that are released for both PS4 and PS5. This is something that I have been saying from the beginning. Final Fantasy XVI is not going to explode on day one, and that's absolutely fine. It doesn't need to. One of Square Enix's recent highest selling games is a perfect example of this. Nier Automata didn't sell crazy numbers coming out of the gate, but purely because of word of mouth, the game exploded and is now at 7 million units sold. Yoshida's plan is for people to go and purchase a PS5, then look at what incredible games there are for it to play, and they will see Final Fantasy XVI. However, this also means that FF16, more so than any Final Fantasy game before it, is really going to rely on things such as the Metacritic. Now you can say what you want about Metacritic, but this game really does need to perform well on there, because whether you take it seriously or not, there are people who really do, and it really does help influence their purchasing decisions. This is also a very streamer-focused game, and a lot of content creators will be playing and promoting this game. I think this is the appropriate strategy to take this game to the top. While there have been a ton of articles clickbaiting the living crap out of this, I don't think it's nearly as doom and gloom as people think it is. But you can guarantee that this will become the center of console fanboy arguments for the next few months. So please look forward to it. Shout out to patron Bowie and the rest of the Ultima community.